The ability to think an object into existence can now be yours for less than the cost of the new iPhone. Today, we'll be talking about 3D printing. Now, with 3D printing, as stated by the New York Times, February 20th, 2013, whatever you need, all the stuff you want to make, you can make. Now, first we'll talk about the basics of 3D printing, then we'll look at some of the medical innovations that it's brought to us, and lastly, we'll look at one of the more dangerous aspects of this technology. So to begin, let's talk about the basics of 3D printing. You start off in one of two ways. First would be to scan an object, like a coffee mug. You would scan the outside and the inside, and then it would make a digital representation of the object that you want. The second method would be to use a 3D modeling program to create from scratch the object that you want. Now, this is done kind of like a sculptor would work with a piece of marble or a piece of wood, only it's on the computer. Now, once you have the digital file, it is sent to a 3D printer, and this is one version of a 3D printer here. Now, this part right here will move side to side, back and forth, putting one layer at a time of the object that you want. So at the bottom it might make a circle or a ring, and then it'll move up one layer. And by the time it gets to the ear, it'll move a little to the left or a little back, and finish the product like that. The items that are printed can be hollow, or they can be filled in. They can be a variety of shapes. There really isn't much limit with this technology. So now that we know the basics of 3D printing, let's look at some of the medical innovations that's brought to us. Now, as stated by U.S. News, July 16, 2014, 3D printing actually lowers the cost of prosthetics from tens of thousands of dollars to a mere hundreds of dollars. Now, this is helpful for people who use prosthetics, obviously, but even more so for families with children who need prosthetics. As they outgrow them, they need them much more constantly and much more often. Now, another great innovation that is brought is that surgeons can now print out an organ and either view it or even practice on it before doing the actual operation on the individual themselves. And this was the case, as shown on NBC News, October 8th, 2014, when doctors at New York Presbyterian, Morgan Stanley, Children's Hospital printed out a newborn's heart. They used multiple MRI scans of the child's heart, and they printed it out. And it looks so. To us, this might look like a blob of plastic, but to the surgeons, this was a wealth of information. And not only because they could look at the outside of the heart, but they were able to cut this open and peer inside and look at the inside of the heart, at where they'd actually be doing the surgery. Now, normally the condition that the child had would require doctors to cut open the chest, stop the heart, and then peer inside of the heart, either through incisions or using cameras. And the surgery would have to be done multiple times, greatly increasing the risk to the child. Now, with this technology, they were able to just print out a copy and do all their observations like that and do just the one surgery, the life-saving surgery. Now that we know the basics of 3D printing and we've looked at some of the medical innovations, let's look at one of the more dangerous aspects of this technology. So I'm talking about 3D printed weapons. Currently, there are no laws or regulations preventing the download or creation of weapons for personal use. And in fact, according to The Guardian, May 6, 2013, Cody Wilson and his group Defense Distributed have actually made freely available a 3D printable handgun. In addition to the handgun, they also work on parts for assault rifles, such as this. This is an AR-15, which is a gun that our military uses. And the only part on this weapon that is actually printed is this white piece here, the lower receiver. And this is actually the only part that is regulated, that has a serial number that you have to have a license to own or to purchase. The rest of these pieces can actually either be bought online or they can be printed themselves. Now, what this means is that anybody with access to a 3D 3D printer and access to the internet can now print a weapon of their own, circumventing the current laws and regulations that we have in effect today. So today we learned about the basics of 3D printing. We looked at some of the medical innovations it's brought, and lastly we looked at one of the more dangerous aspects of this technology. So now, you too, for a few $100s, can print just about anything